Single mom cry for help. Save my baby. And everything changed when he looked in her eyes. Ava Morales stood in the rain, clutching her baby, Julian, close to her chest. The rain fell in relentless sheets, drenching the streets of Manhattan. Yet Ava Morales barely noticed. Her heart raced as she clutched her infant son, Julian, wrapped tightly in a threadbare blanket. His feverish body burned against her skin, and with every labored breath he took, Ava's fear deepened. She hadn't wanted to ask for help. She never had. For years, she'd managed alone, working long shifts as a waitress, putting food on the table, and making sure Julian had everything he needed. But today was different. Today, she was at the end of her rope. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind. He needs immediate treatment, or there may not be much hope left. The medicine Julian needed was expensive, more than she could afford. And so, Ava found herself standing in front of the most expensive hospital in the city, hoping against hope for a miracle. Through the downpour, she spotted him, a tall figure stepping out of a sleek black car. Ethan Thompson. The name alone made her stomach twist. He was a tech CEO, a man who could buy anything, do anything. His wealth and influence were legendary, but it wasn't the headlines that caught Ava's attention. It was his eyes. Even from a distance, she could tell he wasn't just another rich man out for a stroll. There was something different about him. She felt a pang of desperation rise in her chest. She wasn't supposed to beg. She'd spent years avoiding it, but she didn't know what else to do. Julian's tiny breaths were growing weaker, and she had no choice but to take the risk. Her voice barely rose above the sound of the rain, but her words cut through the storm. Please, I need your help. My baby, Ava's throat tightened. He's dying. I don't have the money to save him. Ethan paused in his stride, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the sight of the young woman. She stood before him, drenched, her face pale and drawn, holding her child with a tenderness that spoke of a mother's deep love. He hesitated, unsure of how to respond. The world he lived in was far removed from this. He wasn't used to people asking him for help in such an intimate, raw way. He could feel the weight of her plea pressing against him, but the barriers he'd built around himself, years of protecting his empire, of not getting too involved, pulled him back. He wasn't someone who got tangled up in the problems of others. He had a reputation to maintain, a life to preserve. But as he glanced at her again, a sense of urgency began to gnaw at him. Her eyes were wide, filled with a quiet panic, and Julian's small, fragile form in her arms seemed to plead for more than just sympathy. He had to make a choice. Ava watched him, her heart racing as he stood there, silent, seemingly lost in thought. Her hands shook as she held Julian tighter, her face wet with both rain and tears. Was he going to walk away? Would anyone help her? Ethan could feel the hesitation inside him slowly melting. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about saving face. It was about something deeper, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Something he'd buried beneath his world of stock markets and boardrooms. In that moment, he realized the truth. This wasn't just a woman with a baby. This was a mother fighting for her child. And whether he liked it or not, that was something he couldn't ignore. He took a step forward, the decision made. I'll help, he said, his voice steady despite the storm surrounding them. Ava blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. She looked up at him, and for the first time since arriving in the city, she saw something beyond the man with the wealth and the power. There was kindness in his eyes, a glimmer of something real. I'll make sure your son gets the treatment he needs. Ethan continued, his gaze softening as he looked at Julian. Come with me. Ava didn't know what this man saw in her or why he decided to help, but the relief that flooded through her was overwhelming. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to hope. Together, they walked toward the hospital, the weight of the world lifting just a little. Ethan, a man who had never been caught in the web of someone else's struggle, was now bound to a story he never saw coming. And Ava, a mother whose heart had been breaking for far too long, found herself on the precipice of a new, unexpected journey, one that would change both their lives forever. The sterile white walls of the hospital seemed to close in around Ava as she sat in the waiting room. her hands still clutching the edge of the chair. Julian, now tucked under a warm blanket, was under the care of the doctors, but Ava couldn't shake the fear gnawing at her. It felt like the world had shifted beneath her feet, and she had no control over the outcome. Ethan sat beside her, his usual businesslike demeanor softened. He was silent, his fingers drumming lightly against his leg, but his eyes never strayed far from her or Julian. It was strange. Just hours ago, they were strangers. Now, he seemed to be an anchor in the storm that had swallowed her world. Ava glanced at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. I don't know what to say. I never thought anyone would. I didn't think help would come." Ethan's gaze softened as he turned to her, the weight of her words sinking in. "You don't need to thank me," he replied, his voice steady but kind. This isn't just about you or me. It's about Julian and doing what's right." His words, though simple, resonated with Ava in a way she hadn't expected. She had spent so much time fighting to survive, to protect her son, that she hadn't truly realized how much she needed someone to just be there, to care. The hospital was a world of its own, buzzing with energy, yet it felt like a distant reality to Ava. She had always struggled to navigate places like this, where the wealthy and powerful mingled with the broken, and the boundaries between both seemed vast. But here, in the sterile corridors, she was treated with the same respect as anyone else. The nurses who came to check on Julian were patient and gentle, their smiles offering the first real warmth Ava had felt all day. One of them, a tall woman with soft brown eyes, smiled at Ava as she adjusted the 4-line attached to Julian's tiny arm. "He's doing much better," she reassured, her voice a soft balm against Ava's nervousness. "We're keeping him stable for now, but he'll need further care. He's in good hands." Ava nodded, her throat tightening with emotion. I don't know what I would have done without you." The nurse's smile widened, a genuine kindness in her expression. "We're here for you, both of you." Ethan, still by Ava's side, leaned forward slightly, his eyes flicking from the nurse to Ava, watching her reaction. He hadn't expected this level of care, this tenderness. The professionals around him had always been precise, focused, but here, with this young mother, there was a level of compassion that was hard to ignore. As the nurse left, another one entered, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a kind face. He checked Julian's vitals, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Yet, when he spoke to Ava, his voice held a gentleness that immediately put her at ease. "We'll make sure everything's taken care of," he assured. "You focus on being with him. That's the most important thing." Ava couldn't help but feel a lump form in her throat. These people, strangers, were treating her with such care and respect. In her mind, she had always been just another struggling single mom, invisible in the sea of New York City. But here, in this small corner of the world, she mattered. Julia mattered. Ethan's presence beside her had become a comfort, though she couldn't quite place why. He wasn't one to share much about himself, yet there was a quiet strength in his silence. It was as if he understood the weight of what she was carrying. His gaze on Julian never wavered, his brow furrowed in a way that showed he was invested, more than she had expected from someone like him. "You're not alone in this," he said quietly, his voice barely louder than a breath. It was a simple statement, but in it, Ava sensed something more. It wasn't pity or obligation. It was something deeper, something human. The moment lingered between them, a bridge built on unspoken understanding. As the night wore on, Ava couldn't help but feel grateful. Grateful for Ethan's help, for the medical team's unwavering professionalism, but most of all for the small, tender moments that reminded her that kindness still existed in the world, that there were people out there willing to care, to fight alongside her. And for the first time in a long time, Ava allowed herself to believe that everything might just be okay. The world turned its gaze on them faster than Ava could have ever imagined. It started with a few whispers, comments from hospital staff, murmurs in the hallways, but it quickly escalated. Within hours, every news outlet had their eyes trained on Ethan Thompson, the wealthy CEO, and his unexpected involvement with a struggling single mother and her sick child. What was meant to be a simple act of kindness had become headline news. Tech mogul saves life of struggling single mother, the headlines read. Ethan Thompson's charity to a mystery woman revealed. In the days that followed, the story exploded in every direction. Social media flooded with theories about Ethan's motives. Some speculated it was a publicity stunt. Others suggested he was dating Ava. The more the media dug into his past, the more the public seemed to obsess over every detail of his life. But none of the reports got it right. They couldn't. They didn't understand that it wasn't about charity or image. Ethan had simply helped without an agenda. Ava couldn't escape the coverage. She opened her phone one morning, only to be met with a barrage of notifications. News articles, Instagram posts, even tabloids with her face plastered on the cover. Who is Ava Morales? The woman who captured the heart of Ethan Thompson. The headlines were cruel, twisting the truth, painting her as little more than an opportunist. The last thing she had ever wanted was attention. She had never asked for any of it. And now, she was at the center of a scandal she never saw coming. Ethan, once the pillar of support, now seemed distant. Ava noticed his absence before anything else. She hadn't seen him in days, no calls, no texts, nothing. The silence was deafening. Ava's heart sank with each passing hour. She had trusted him. She had let herself believe that his help wasn't just out of obligation, that it wasn't just a fleeting moment of goodwill. But now, with every article that painted her as an opportunist and every headline questioning Ethan's character, she felt abandoned. The few times they had spoken since the media frenzy had been strained, forced even. Ethan's voice was distant, his words carefully measured, as if he was calculating every response. It hurt more than she could have imagined. "Have you seen the papers?" he asked, his voice sharp the last time they spoke. Ava swallowed hard, nodding, though the tears she had fought to hold back began to sting her eyes. "Yes, I've seen them. I need to lay low for a while. This whole thing is getting out of control." Ethan explained, his words slow, deliberate. Ava's chest tightened. "So that's it? You're just going to disappear?" Ethan hesitated, a long, uncomfortable silence filling the space between them. When he spoke again, it was with an air of resignation. "It's not about you, Ava. It's about everything else. The media, the scrutiny. I don't know how to handle it." The words felt like a slap. She had seen how he handled pressure before, how he had built his empire in the face of overwhelming odds. But now, faced with the most personal challenge of his life, he was retreating. Ava had never felt so small, so alone. "I'm not asking you to fix the media, Ethan," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm just asking for you to stay." But his retreat was already inevitable. For the next few days, he didn't return her calls. His messages were short and cold, as if he was shutting down completely. Ava tried to reach out, but the distance between them had become too vast. Every part of her wanted to scream, wanted to shake him and demand answers. But the truth was, she didn't know who he was anymore. The man who had promised to help, who had held her hand through the storm, was gone. And now, she was left to pick up the pieces alone. The hardest part, though, wasn't the media. It wasn't the scandal or the harsh judgment from the public. It was the feeling of abandonment. The feeling that Ethan had used her and Julian for his own redemption, only to walk away when the spotlight got too bright. Ava sat in the silence of her apartment, Julian sleeping soundly beside her. The world had fallen apart, and she wasn't sure how to put it all back together. But one thing was clear, she had to do it on her own, and somehow she would, even if Ethan Thompson never came back. The days after Ethan's retreat were heavy with silence. Ava kept to herself, focusing on Julian, who was fighting a battle of his own. The media buzzed on, but for her, the world had shrunk down to a small hospital room and the fragile life of her son. Julian's condition had improved after his initial treatment, but just when she thought things were stabilizing, disaster struck. It was early one morning when she found Julian burning with fever again, his small body shivering beneath the thin hospital sheets. Ava's heart clenched in her chest, panic rising like a tidal wave. His breathing was shallow, labored, and his little hands were cold. She reached for the call button, but a part of her already knew what the doctors would say: a relapse. Hours stretched into what felt like days as the doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him. But deep down, Ava couldn't escape the gnawing thought that something was missing. Her hope, her strength, and most painfully, Ethan. He had been her rock when everything was falling apart. But now, with him gone, the weight of it all seemed unbearable. Ethan had disappeared into his world of business, leaving no room for the mess that came with her and Julian. And yet, despite everything, despite the hurt, Ava found herself wishing he were here. She sat by Julian's bedside, feeling small and powerless, when her phone buzzed unexpectedly. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Ethan Thompson. It was the first time he had reached out in days, and Ava's heart skipped. Her fingers hovered over the screen, unsure whether to respond. But before she could think twice, she opened the message. "I need to see you. I'm sorry, Ava. I should have never walked away." Ava's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words sank in. He was apologizing? After everything, he was apologizing? It didn't make sense. Ethan had made it clear he needed space, that the media and public opinion were too much for him to handle. And yet, here he was admitting he was wrong. She didn't know what to think, but she knew Julian needed her focus. With a weary sigh, she set the phone down, pushing the complicated emotions aside. She couldn't afford distractions. Julian needed her strength now more than ever. Ethan didn't give up. He arrived at the hospital that afternoon, his presence in the doorway instantly commanding attention. Ava looked up, startled, and there he stood, guilt written across his face. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice tight. He stepped forward, his eyes locked on Julian's fragile form. "I'm so sorry, Ava. I should never have left. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. I see that now." Ava looked at him, her emotions a storm she didn't know how to weather. "You left me," she said, the words coming out sharper than she intended. "You left me when I needed you the most. Julian needed you." Ethan swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. "I know, and I've regretted it every minute since. I ran because I thought I couldn't handle it. But the truth is, I can't imagine my life without you or Julian. I'm here, Ava. I'm not going anywhere." There was something in his voice, a sincerity that made Ava's chest ache. Ethan had always been the type to keep his distance, to remain untouchable. But now he was standing before her, vulnerable, raw, and completely honest. And for the first time in days, Ava let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Her heart softened, though the pain of his abandonment still lingered. But she saw something new in him, something she hadn't seen before. Ethan wasn't just the successful businessman anymore. He was a man who had finally come to terms with what mattered most. "I don't need perfection," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I just need you to stay, to be here for us." Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I'll stay. I promise. No more running. No more excuses. I'm with you, Ava, and I'll help you fight for him, for Julian. We'll do this together." Ava looked at him, her heart still guarded, but a flicker of hope began to spark. He had said the words. Now, it was time to see if he meant them. For the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but as long as Ethan was by her side, she wasn't alone. And that was all she needed to begin the long journey of healing, for her son, for herself, and for the future they would rebuild together. Ethan's apology marked a turning point, not just in their relationship, but in the way Ava saw the world. With him, maybe she could learn to trust again, and maybe, just maybe, they could find redemption in each other. It was a quiet evening when Ethan and Ava sat down to discuss the future, the weight of their recent experiences settling between them like an unspoken promise. Julian was finally home, recovering steadily, but Ava knew that life had forever changed. They had both been through a storm, individually and together, and something within them had shifted. "I've been thinking," Ethan began, breaking the silence, his voice tentative but sincere. "We've been through so much, and I've seen the struggles you face every day. It's not just you, Ava. There are so many women like you, single mothers fighting battles that no one sees. Ava looked up, meeting his gaze. She could hear the conviction in his voice, the understanding that had deepened between them in recent weeks. The walls that had once stood between them were gone, replaced by something stronger, a partnership born from shared pain, growth, and healing. "I never wanted to be a charity case," Ava said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "I never wanted anyone to look at me and think I was weak. But I've learned that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a step towards strength." Ethan nodded, his brow furrowed, as if he were weighing her words. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. What if we did something to help other women, like you, who are fighting just as hard as you did?" Ava's heart skipped. She knew what he meant, but the idea felt like a dream, one that seemed too big, too daunting to be real. "You're saying a foundation?" she asked carefully. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes filled with determination. "Yes, a foundation to support single mothers and their babies, provide financial assistance, resources, and a community where they're not judged or overlooked. We can give them the tools to succeed, just like you've done for Julian." Ava's breath caught in her throat. The idea was overwhelming, but it resonated deeply. This was more than just giving back. It was a chance to create something lasting, something that would help women who had been silenced by circumstances. It would be their way of making a real difference in the world, a way to honor the struggles of women like her. "What would we call it?" Ava asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan smiled, the idea already taking root in his mind. "Let's call it Hope for Tomorrow. Because every woman deserves hope, and we'll give it to them." The name hung in the air, simple yet powerful, and Ava felt a spark of something deep within her. It was hope. It was action. It was the future they could build together. They began planning in earnest, poring over details, deciding on the mission and the vision for the foundation. It wasn't just about offering financial aid. It was about changing lives, breaking the cycles that kept women and children trapped in poverty. They wanted to offer more than just charity. They wanted to offer empowerment. In the weeks that followed, the foundation began to take shape. Ethan's resources and network were invaluable, but it was Ava's heart and dedication that brought everything to life. She worked tirelessly, contacting other single mothers, gathering stories, and connecting with community leaders who could help spread the word. Her passion was contagious, and soon, the foundation gained momentum. Finally, the day arrived when they were ready to announce Hope for Tomorrow to the public. They scheduled a press conference, and as the day of the event approached, Ava couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was their moment, an opportunity to reach countless women who needed hope, just like she had. The press conference was held in a large hall, filled with reporters, local figures, and supporters. Ethan stood beside her, his presence a steady anchor as they unveiled their mission to the world. "This foundation is a product of our journey," Ethan said, his voice strong, filled with conviction. "Ava and I both know what it's like to feel like the world is against you. But we also know what it feels like to find a way forward. With Hope for Tomorrow, we want to give single mothers the support they need to create a future they can believe in." Ava took a deep breath, stepping forward to speak. "I was just another single mom, struggling to make ends meet. But there's something powerful about knowing you're not alone. This foundation isn't just about resources. It's about giving women a community, a voice, and the chance to build a life that they deserve." As they spoke, Ava saw the crowd nodding in agreement, heard the whispers of support. It was happening. Their dream was becoming a reality. The press conference ended with applause, but for Ava, the real work had just begun. As she walked off the stage, Ethan by her side, she felt a surge of pride. This was the new beginning she had always dreamed of. Together, they had built something that would outlast them. Hope for Tomorrow wasn't just a foundation, it was a lifeline. And for the first time in her life, Ava felt truly empowered. Their journey had only just begun, but one thing was clear. No matter what came next, they would face it together, hand in hand as partners. The sun set gently over the expansive garden, casting a soft golden hue on the scene. The air was warm with the sound of laughter and conversation, the scent of fresh flowers drifting in the breeze. Ethan and Ava stood hand in hand, looking out at the gathering of friends, family, and the very community they had spent so much time helping. It had been a journey neither of them had expected, yet here they were, surrounded by love and hope, embarking on a new chapter of their lives. Ava's heart fluttered as she looked at Ethan. In the months since they had founded hope for tomorrow, they had watched countless lives change. Women who had once felt invisible now had a platform, a place where they could rebuild their futures. It wasn't just the foundation that had grown, it was their relationship, too. They had learned to trust each other, to lean on one another when the world seemed overwhelming. Now, standing at the altar, Ava couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. She had never imagined a day like this. As a single mom, she had always kept her dreams simple: survival, security, and making sure Julian had the best life possible. But now, with Ethan by her side, she had more than she had ever dreamed of. She had love, stability, and a family that was whole. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, his smile wide and sincere. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his voice full of warmth. Ava smiled back, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." The ceremony began, the soft hum of the violin filling the air as the officiant spoke words that felt as if they were written just for them. The guests were silent, all eyes on the couple as they exchanged vows that were both deeply personal and filled with hope. Ethan promised to always stand by her, to help her navigate the future, to be the father Julian deserved. Ava promised to never give up, to build a life where love, trust, and kindness would guide them. When they kissed, a wave of applause broke through the quiet, a symbol of the support that had grown around them over the years. Friend from the foundation, the doctors who had helped Julian, and the people who had supported them along the way were all there to witness the union of two people who had fought through the storms of life to find each other. The reception that followed was nothing short of magical. Guests danced beneath a canopy of twinkling lights, the soft glow of the lanterns reflecting the warmth of the evening. The music played, but there was a different rhythm to the night, a rhythm of a new beginning, of promises kept, and of a future full of possibilities. Ava and Ethan, as the center of attention, moved around the room, exchanging joyful greetings, but their eyes often found each other, sharing quiet moments of understanding and connection. Julian, now a healthy and energetic boy, ran around the dance floor, his laughter echoing through the air. Ava watched him, her heart swelling with love. It wasn't just their wedding. It was a celebration of their journey as a family that had been built on the foundations of love, support, and resilience. Ethan stood beside her, his arm around her waist as they watched their son. "We did it," he whispered. Together, Ava rested her head on his shoulder, the weight of everything they had overcome finally sinking in. "We did," she replied, her voice filled with both relief and joy. The night wore on, but as the last song played and the final guests began to leave, Ava and Ethan stood together at the edge of the garden, taking it all in. The lights from the reception hall twinkled behind them, but it was the quiet of the night, the calm that came after the storm, that felt the most significant. This was the start of their forever. No longer were they two individuals navigating life's challenges alone. They were a family, a team, and together, they would continue to build a future full of love, compassion, and hope. The journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but now, with each other, they were ready to face whatever came next. Ava turned to Ethan, her heart full. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with unwavering confidence. "Yes, it is, and it's going to be incredible." As they walked back inside, hand in hand, surrounded by those who loved them, it was clear that their story had only just begun. They had faced the darkest moments and come out stronger, and now, with Julian by their side, they were ready to embrace the bright future ahead. Love, family, and hope had become their foundation, and together, they would continue to build something beautiful. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from and drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of Ava, Ethan, and Julian's journey? Did their love and perseverance inspire you as much as it did us? We'd love to hear your take on their story. Stay tuned for more captivating tales, and thank you for being part of our growing community. Your support means the world to us.